2022. I'm just sort of going back over all my gigs and just sort of a emotional autobiography in progress, composition out loud, sort of a Hyperion or a Changeling, kind of protean storytelling. And just if you watch my City Life video series, if you watch, it's like a 24-hour masterpiece. It's really an immersive environmental, and pretty much the whole experience is there. But I think, as a so I'm talking kind of I'm talking about this emotional autobiography of the last year, through the lens of basically the events and the gigs I played. I'm talking about the gigs that I played, basically. Because that's the craft, that's the path, that's the thing that I'm sort of focused on getting good at, and that has been the priority for the last year. The first half of the year, filming shit at Poetry Project and documenting it, working on those videos. And like I said, just getting back up to speed. If you look these first few months, I'm doing like 2 gigs a month. It's crazy. I'm kicking myself because I thought that was reasonable. I didn't know how to get out there more. I wasn't looking into poetry open mics at all. The first fucking poetry open mic I do, KGB open mic on 420, and I'll get into that in a second. But so Freddy's, I booked a gig at Freddy's. It's kind of an old standby because I don't know. Well, they sort of, not mistakenly, but I said that I had done this reading, and it's true. I used to do this reading series, Having a Whiskey Coke with You, which was a great series. They had like an open mic section, which I would do. And, but they didn't really like me that much either. They were nice. Jesse Katz was the guy who ran it, who was super cool. But, they didn't necessarily love my presence or anything. I get the same reaction pretty much everywhere I go when it comes to poetry shit. Or I did, anyway. So anyway, I mentioned that in the email, and they were like, "Oh my God, they're like family. You guys, what night do you want? We'll give you a Friday night." And so I told them it was going to be this Kerouac celebration, which is true, but I think they thought I was going to bring some jazz band and like go out and get all these readers and this and that. And this was the first System Lord gig ever. So I think in February, somehow Nevin and I reconnected. I think he saw, I don't even know. I think he saw that I played a gig at Pete's or something. Somebody had seen it through social media maybe, and he messaged me, "Hey, you want to jam or whatever?" And so I went out to his place in Bay Ridge. I don't even know how many times I went out there before the gig. To be honest, I probably only went out once or twice before we played the gig. Because, we were basically, I just do whatever. He kind of, commands the sound and kind of orchestrates it. And so the first System Lord was actually a Jack Kerouac tribute show at Freddy's. I had ideas about booking other people. I had a lot of ideas. I was going to book my friend Nico, who I went to high school with, because he's like a priest. He's like a Greek priest, and like Kerouac was like, the executors of Kerouac's estate are Greeks, Sampus, and they're friends that he like grew up with. They're like a family of Greek people from Lowell, Massachusetts that like he grew up with and he trusted. He kind of trusted them more maybe than, I don't know, literary people or something. That's like the Catholic thing and the kind of provincial thing. And so that's a part. And my friend Nico plays jazz, and he's like a beat. He's one of my oldest friends, I would say, and he's like a beat character. We had a nice kind of dinner last summer, and it kind of, I don't know. I was bad about, I was bad about hanging out. I was still in COVID prison. So we played this gig at Freddy's. Like I said, I underbooked it. Maybe people thought they were gonna see something else. I got good promo for it. Like, there was, I don't know if it was in Nonsense, but like it was mentioned on something about like, oh, there's gonna be this Jack Kerouac show, and Freddy's promoted it, but it was System Lord. It wasn't like this jazz. There really wasn't even. I don't even. I think I read briefly, maybe from a. I don't even think I read anything. In the days before that, I had read the Kerouac interview in the Paris Review conducted by Ted Berrigan, which I recommend everybody go out and seek immediately if you haven't read it. It's fucking hilarious. And it really covers all the bases. It's an excellent, excellent interview. It's very well done. It's a classic. And it's not in the collected prose, which I guess makes sense because you can find it other places, but to me it's one of the essential Berrigan things, actually. It's the link between Kerouac and Ted Berrigan, It's the, he did the fucking Paris Review interview for him, And that's something you might not expect from Ted Berrigan's style, per se. Kerouac was maybe a little wilder or something, or like, out of control. He wasn't trying to be as careful or, Ted Berrigan always, he revises stuff. That's one thing he says. He says he won't create new works until he creates things of a certain standard. His works have to meet a certain level. Kerouac was more kind of, I don't know, rough around the edges, trying to make a point about doing that, I think. As some kind of like outsider, provincial American, not, a traveler. You can feel the kind of interior of the continent. And you can feel, I don't know, a kind of wild America in all of Kerouac's writing. And it just doesn't really exist after a certain year to some degree. So for me, it was a Kerouac tribute show. The fact that System Lord was born, I think Kerouac would love System Lord. I mean, it wouldn't have hurt if we could have used a saxophone or some kind of, sort of cliche jazz element to sort of like ground it in that for people. Like, I do think there are people that came out to see a Kerouac tribute show and were like, what the fuck is this? And our show was kind of like weirdly aggressive, and I don't remember what happened, but okay, that wasn't the gig we got banned. That gig went pretty well, I think. It wasn't, if you watch it, I think there's a video on YouTube of the first System Lord at Freddy's in Park Slope, which the reason why I booked it was it's because it's halfway between Bay Ridge and where I am. So it was like perfect. They live in Bay Ridge. We could meet at Freddy's. I was looking for a venue, but I don't know. System Lord, it was a good, it was a good show. Like, I mentioned some fucking Kerouac shit. Like, I'd have to watch it again. It was before Andrea joined the band. And so, like, predominantly the first couple months of this year, the predominant creative stuff, I was kind of picking up where I left off doing music stuff, weirdly enough. Even though I had done a bunch of poetry stuff last year, to me, the beginning part of this year, the only thing I really knew how to do was book gigs and play music gigs. And so that's what I kept trying to do for the first few months of, like, my return to, like, New York. It just didn't seem, to be honest, it did not seem that feasible as a poet to book things for myself. What the fuck am I going to book? I could book readings and stuff, I just, I don't know if I was that interested at this point, and maybe I didn't know that many poets at this point. You know, like Nevin was maybe one of the first people I really like reconnected with and was like, okay, let's go, let's do this, let's go out, let's get gigs, let's collaborate. Like, you know, I feel comfortable in your home. I'm not gonna, you know, after the Omicron thing in the winter, I made I just made the choice like I'm done with COVID. I'm just gonna live, you know, I'm just gonna live my life and like I'll be safe about it as much as I can, but like I'm not gonna let it, you know, rule everything like I had been, you know. I mean, I got a lot done last year, but I could have gotten more done. So that was kind of frustrating. And so these first couple months coming out of winter, I'm just like picking up speed. You know, it's frustrating that I didn't have something in place that I could have just hit the ground running when I got here and gone out and done all these stand-up comedy open mics and all this and that. Like at this point, I really hadn't, you know, I didn't. My first stand-up comedy thing I did was in June. It was at the beginning of June, and it had occurred to me because, like I said, when I did that Valentine's Day show, my friend Greg was like, I loved your stand up. So I was like, okay, I should probably get involved with that. But to be honest, it was just so intimidating. Like the entry point, you know, kind of the insertion point of doing that, getting into the skin of that kind of world and that scene was very intimidating. You know, like where do I go? What, you know, it's like all of these respective forms, music, poetry, comedy, whatever it is, theater, they all have their own scenes, they all have their own worlds and their own kind of networks and pipelines. And they, you know, there's some overlap, but like the musicians are hardcore into what they're doing. They dress a certain way, they hang out in certain bars. Comedians, it's a whole other fucking thing. You know, there's not a whole lot of overlap between the two. Poets, I don't know, you know, you'll go to events and shit, you'll go to gigs, this or that, but like everybody's in kind of career mode. You're going out to other poetry shit, you're going out to other comedy shit, you're doing shows. You know, the goal is to do as many shows as possible. But once again, at this point, I'm still in the mindset of I'm in a band. I can only do 2 gigs a month because otherwise, you know, we'll like overextend our draw or whatever. We didn't have any draw. Well, this was a nice gig because actually a lot of people from Nevin and Emily's Jobs like showed up, like because they live out there and like the it's out in Sunset Park, so it was like kind of a local gig. That's why it was smart for us to play that gig, and like it was dumb for Freddy's to ban us because we did have a little bit of like some regulars that maybe would have, you know, it's not a huge room to begin with. Like we were an eclectic sort of like modern day equivalent of like They Might Be Giants or something. We're holding it down for like weird Brooklyn duos, and like it does feel frustrating. Like I emailed Mama Tried to get a gig. So the first 6 months of this year, you know, I was focused on booking music shit because that's just what I know. To be honest, it was a pivotal moment in my life when I decided like, or when I just realized like, wait a minute, this music thing, I've never really pursued it actually like a career, and it's just kind of a fucking, it's fun to do, but like to make a career out of it, it's all about the recordings and all like the publicity materials and shit like that. I'm all about the live show. And music is this sort of like cacophonous opera where you can just behave completely childishly and like to extremes. You can go to extremes. You can fully kind of extend yourself emotionally, and people are not necessarily going to get weirded out like they would at a poetry reading, let's say. And to be honest, it's just an extension of a fucking poetry reading. I mean, this System Lord, we were just figuring out what it was, but this was essentially a poetry reading. There was a lot of nice little ambient moments in this. You know, there were some quiet moments. I played like a drum on like a champagne bucket. There was some nice interactions between reality and the kind of digital. And it's cool to see System Lord develop. You know, the first couple months, it's just Nevin and myself. and then Andrea joins in June. And I've got all the videos on YouTube. So if you're looking for something to do this holiday season, you can watch the entire System Lord story arc and character arc, and you can see the dimensions and how things change. It's like watching The Grateful Dead. You know, we have every show. They're all different. They're all individual works of art. They're all action paintings. And appropriately enough, it all started as a Kerouac tribute show for his 100th birthday, no less. It wasn't just, you wouldn't do a Kerouac tribute show necessarily every year on his birthday. You could, but I don't know. Kerouac's maybe not quite, I don't know, the industry's not quite pumping out the Imago as much as they did, but for the 100th birthday, I think in particular, we needed to go all out, and we gave birth to System Lord on that day. On Kerouac's 100th birthday was System Lord's 0 birthday, 0 hour. And then, so the 26th, we had a gig at, Emily had this amazing art show on Avenue B in this gallery. I forget what the fucking gallery is called, but it's fucking cool-ass space. Which living in Manhattan, playing a gig on Avenue B, I walked to the fucking gig. It was really like one of the happiest days of my life. Because it's like springtime, end of March. It was like raining, but it was like kind of warm. I'm wearing my red t-shirt. I'm coming out of hibernation. I live my life on my terms. I smoke weed as much as I want. I got my portable PA. And, my performances when I was coming back into doing it were really interesting because there was kind of a fearlessness. I don't know what it was about. I think it was just like the pandemic kind of like almost killed, the whole Trump thing. There was some sense that like we had escaped death or something. And so like, I don't know, there was something that like, if you watch like my my New York Poetry Festival reading from last year, like I was just comfortable on stage in a way. I think because like we had come back from such like a crappy situation and year where it really did feel like things were dire and being pushed to the limit with Trump and the fucking pandemic and the marches and just the kind of it was a action packed year, and a lot was going on in my personal life too. And so, I don't know. There was some sense, at this point, I was really listening to a lot of Rollins. I was listening to the audiobook of Get in the Van. And I like the way that Rollins just kind of goes toe-to-toe with the audience and face-to-face. And at that time, I think being in New York and doing a lot of shows and getting involved in, like, the social scenes and all of the fucking people can kind of wear on you. And, like, it's not necessarily competitive, although it is competitive. Maybe that's not a good way to look at it. Maybe we should look at it more as a community, but you are trying to stand out and you're running with a lot of big fish. There's a lot of talented people and like, so you're competing with a lot of people for attention and you're not always getting attention. And so it wears on you. You get emotional about stuff. You get this or that. At this point, I was still fresh. There was none of that kind of intimidating New York factor. I just felt like we're playing with house money here. We just got paroled, basically, kind of miraculously. We got a pardon from the governor. Like, plus, we're just coming out of the Trump era and the COVID era. Like, let's just fucking go nuts. And I had all the, the weird thing about the pandemic was I was doing all these performances. I was doing goddamn live streams for hours a day. During the weekends, I'd be live streaming for like, I don't know, 4, 6, 8 hours a day, each day. And so I was sort of practicing performance. And like, if you watch that video of me doing the, just going ape shit to all the music and stuff, that was like the beginning of System Lord. Because that's all I do with System Lord, is what I do in that video. And I learned that in my mom's living room watching YouTube videos and fucking just trying to do anything on a live stream and just expand what I was doing. You know, it's sort of like, I don't know. There's a whole other side of how I like to perform that's more kind of like just kind of dance and like sound and like performance art, more like Matthew Silver in a way. And so if you watch that video of me and my mom, the one with where I'm lighting the incense and I've got the guitar and I'm doing Chelsea Morning and I've got the gold on my hands, that was sort of like the first System Lord, because I'm playing YouTube videos and I've DJ'd like the fucking background and shit. And so all I do in System Lord is I play YouTube videos off my phone and I stream of consciousness, sort of just like method poetry about whatever the fuck. You know, I'm constantly collecting dialogue. I'm constantly trying to like write down or like soak up like the most hardcore, just like delicious kind of like street phrases I can. And so System Lord is just like, here's the point to just like empty all that out and use all that. You know, it's like, what do I want to say this time? I want to speak to some political thing. I want to speak, you know, I want to talk about Jack Kerouac. I want to talk about the Paris Review interview. I'm going to use stuff from that. At Emily's art show, my mantra was take it to the limit, because that was sort of the overlap between John Giorno. John Giorno is a huge influence on System Lord and everything I've been doing post-pandemic, because he's almost like a stand-up comedian poet. His stuff is so contemporary, and he gets these kind of crystallized phrases. These kind of like fully realized kind of phrases just kind of like bullet out of his consciousness, and his poems are just kind of full of this wisdom mind and these these intense kind of vivid memorable dialogue. And so, but when he reads it, he'll put it through an echo chamber, so it like repeats it a lot. He worked with Moog. He actually knew Robert Moog like in the 60s, kind of before it was like on everybody's album, and he worked with Robert Moog to develop these kind of like different ways of processing his voice and shit, which, to be honest, is exactly what I've been doing with fucking Wavetable and with System Lord. And so thinking about getting up there, and it's almost like a solo monologue performance where you can do characters and you can do little lines of poetry, but you're kind of making it up as you go along. Shatner, you know. And so taking it to the limit. Take it to the limit one more time. That's what Giorno says. And it's also an Eagles song. And so the theme of this gig was sort of an overlap between that Eagles kind of like cocaine bloated 70s like corporate country rock excess, Don Henley's Ponytail, taking it to the limit one more time. We're doing more coke. We're riding our motorcycle 100 miles an hour. We're having another tequila sunrise. You know, we're taking to the limit one more time because we're baby boomers and we get away with it our whole fucking lives. We just partied the whole fucking time. And we're legends and we're gods and aren't we so great, blah, blah, blah. And so System Lord, obviously, are like the Eagles and are rock legends. And so I played that song. I played Donkashane. That was a big moment. I grabbed it. I didn't grab this girl, but like I did the hand of God. Actually, to this girl in the crowd. I put my hand out. We started dancing. You know, at that point, I was still free. I was just coming out of the woods. I'd been like in the Garden of Eden, walking around Manhattan, reading my poetry in Central Park like I'm fucking, Walt Whitman with a huge beard or something. And they haven't even developed it or anything yet. And so, I start dancing with this girl. It was this amazing kind of like crowd interactive moment. That show, there was just this kind of like eyeball to eyeball with the crowd. I ran out onto Avenue B. That was one of the best shows of the year, definitely, for me. It was just like, the fact that it was in an art gallery, second System Lord gig, the videos on YouTube. I sang Donkashane. Uh, My Love by Wings. Whoa, 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 whoa. Filming more shit at Poetry Project. If I'm looking at my calendar, I'm seeing a lot of shit. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 events in April. That was when the gala was. The gala was one of the highlights of the year, definitely. Getting paid $500 to run around with a camera and eat fancy food, dance. Being around big celebrities, filming big celebrities. Technically, I did make a film with both Dasha Nekrasova and Chloe Savigny. I might be the only director who can say that, actually. Am I the only director that has filmed both? It's part of my ongoing Lives of the Poets. You know, the Poetry Project videos and the System Lord videos and the KGB open mic videos and the Scenes from a Life videos and the live stream videos, it's all one thing. You know, the Poetry Project videos are much a part of my work as anything. They're films that I direct. You know, I'm like at this point, I was still filming it with my equipment. We were transitioning to the live stream, but I was still lugging my equipment in, my DSLR, and filming it like I'm goddamn Matthew Brady or something. I was doing it the old-fashioned way. I made some really nice films of Poetry Project readings because I wanted to visually document the space and the events. I just wanted to film it. I filmed the gala. I filmed Dasha. I filmed Chloe Savigny. Zach Posen was there. That Adam Green guy. A lot of the downtown. And then just a bunch of rich people. It was just a crock of shit. But it was fun to be glam for one night. That will live. I mean, it was in the New York Times. I wasn't, but I still had my mullet at this point. You know, I wonder if I would have cut my hair. My idea was to shave my head at my show Valentine's Day 2020. So my last show before the pandemic was Valentine's Day 2020. So it was 2 years to the day that I did the Pete's show. But I should have shaved my head in 2020. Instead, I kept the long hair until summer this year. I just, you know, it takes a long time to grow long hair, and I've never had it before, and I just wanted to do it as long as I had long hair basically since 2018, so I had long hair basically for 4 years. It was a mistake. It was not really for me, but it was a protest hair. You know, it was anti-Trump hair, and it didn't look, it didn't look that bad. At times it looked kind of good. But I obviously look much better with my hair like this. Styled. People are constantly asking me about my hair. Do you put gel in it? I cut it myself. I love saying I cut it myself. It's my favorite thing. Your hair. It's not necessarily compliments, I guess. It's like, whoa, your hair is unique. I cut it myself, thank you. So yeah, you know, I was still, prioritizing filming other shit. You know, a big part of my work, and I don't really get credit for this, and the karma certainly doesn't come back, but like I platform tons of fucking people through filming videos and putting them on the internet, hosting open mics, booking events, publishing people, hosting salons even. Like, I platform a lot of fucking people. I put a lot of people on at the open mic. I publish people. And through the filming events, I get to broadcast other people rather than having it be about me, right? This is about me. But to balance it out, I film. I'm not in any of the videos. I'm not in any of the goddamn Poetry Project videos. They don't give me credit. I'm not in any of the Instagram posts about the open mic because I'm taking the fucking pictures. Nobody's taking pictures of me, really. The compare. I heard that word today, compare. Is that what it is, right? Compare? Who said that? Was it Orson Welles or who said compare? The MC. Was it Jerry Lewis? It was on one of the Dick Cavett interviews, I think. Somebody said compare. Oh, Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks said compare. And I looked it up. It's French for MC. Mel Brooks goes, compare. It's French for MC. So I'm going to use that at the open mic. I'm going to call myself the compare. The Toulouse-Lautrec. I've actually got a lot of signups for Monday. I'm kind of surprised. It's going to be cool. Like I said, it's all the locals. You know, it's the people who stay. So compare, I looked it up. The etymology is pair, father, comb, gathering. Compare, MC, meaning father of the gathering. Not to gender it, but I'm the father of the gathering, I suppose. That makes sense. Creating families, creating surrogate families. One of Ashley's friends, this obnoxious, precocious little brat, looks at me and he goes, why are you always trying to create families? I'm like, how the fuck did you know that? I didn't even know that. Are you my psychiatrist? You've been watching my live streams, haven't you? They're basically therapy. They're radio broadcasts. This is Radio Free fucking Chelsea. Radio Free Proctor. Alright, so this is an important event I should talk about. The 420 reading. It makes sense that this happened on 420. The 420 open mic at KGB, which, as best as I can recall, I think is the first time I was ever even in the Red Room. You know, I walked all over fucking Manhattan last year trying to find a venue to do an open mic, and I could not think of anywhere. And I could have, you know, because I had done a reading at KGB, and so I very easily could have, like, just been like, why don't I do it? But I thought, well, all they have is that fucking, like, podium and, like, the microphone and shit. It's like, how am I going to do? I'd never been in the Red Room. I just thought, oh, they got the downstairs. I can't really do what I need to do. I want to do this, you know, I want to have music and this and that. So I walked around for a year. I could have been doing the open mic for a year before I started doing it. Or longer. I could have started doing it summer 2021. I should have. KGB had a little bit more of an edge. The whole city did at that point. It was still freaked out because 20,000 people had died, you know, in a month in March 2020. It's amazing how quickly we've moved on. You don't even think about it. Nobody even talks about it. You know, 20,000 people here died. It's insane. Like, literally, not even 3 years ago. That's fucking crazy. And here we are. Right back in the shit. Things going back to normal. Everybody's lives getting fucked up like they were before. The thing that does worry me about, like, the Biden thing and just, like, the era that we're in is it does feel like we're just, like, moving on and things are sort of, like, returning to the way they were before. And, like, Trump was not good, but, like, there definitely were things that opened up politically that, like, I guess we couldn't live in that energy forever, but, you know, you see people going back to kind of apathy or whatever. So, anyway, the KGB open mic on 420. Obviously, it's 420, and I had done one. Didn't I do one in February? Or I thought I did one in February. Maybe I didn't write it down. I swear I did an open mic earlier in the year. Maybe they weren't doing it in February. I did one in November, then I thought I came back. But in any case, this was the first one they did in the Red Room. And so it was the first time I'd been in that space. And it was 420. I think I had microdosed. I think I did like a little bit of a tab because when I started doing System Lord, obviously, I got acid again. Speaking of which, I think I'm gonna do acid on Christmas. I think that's gonna be my Christmas present to myself. So anyway, this 420 open mic, obviously, you gotta be at that. That's just like the fucking event of the, where else are you gonna be on 420? So I go and I read my poem. I read a poem from, I think from Single Room Occupancy. Part of my poem about going to band practice. That in a certain way, it's the things that like you don't, or the things that are like inconveniences or something that often lead to like productivity in a weird way. Like going to band practice, I suddenly had these long poems that were like pretty good because it's an hour and a half to Bay Ridge, and I just wrote the whole time. And it's like, it's kind of interesting the way it traverses the city and stuff. So it opens the chapbook. I think that might be the Kerouac chapbook. Yeah, it is. That's the Kerouac chapbook. But in any case, I read it at the KG open mic because it's 3 minutes and it worked. And so it was so weird because, like I said, it's the first time I'm in that space and it's the first time I've ever been on that stage. And I remember friends having book releases at Red Room in like 2017 and shit, 2016. And so I really should have known about it way sooner. This is the benefit, I think, of just going out, going to different events, going to different venues. You never know what is going to come in handy. You never, even seeing an open mic, the people you see perform, you may not have heard of them now, but you never know where they're going to go or what they're going to be, or, like how they're going to come back into your life, or, we're all alive and we all go on and we all continue our streaming forth, and like we may intersect again, and it's kind of interesting. So anyway, the KGB 420 open mic, it was kind of an origin story moment because I'm up on stage, and it was the first reading I'd done in a while. I hadn't really done any poetry readings indoors, and so I was a little, rusty. I didn't want to do open mics really. I kind of bombed at the KGB open mic like in last November. I read this poem about Cary Grant breaking his neck, and I don't know. It seemed maybe ableist or something. Or I was high and maybe it felt that way. So at this open mic, my reading went pretty well. And at the end, I remember I got kind of into it and I took the microphone off the stand and I started to go into this. I started to pose like this and I saw this vision in my head and I thought, this is Seinfeld. I thought, this is the opening of Seinfeld. On stage, at the Red Room, this environment, because I had watched all that Seinfeld in 2021, and I kind of wanted to get into this world or something. Like, so to me, it was an allegory or like a parallel for poetry life. Seinfeld is really about the life of a poet. He spends his day in leisure in the metropolis, just kind of observing, walking around with his friends, hanging out in the diner, drinking coffee, writing material maybe, kind of fine-tuning it on his little scraps of paper or whatever, and then he takes it to the club where he does his recitation, and he reports on what he's seen and what he's found and his observations and his little joke poems, which Seinfeld stuff, if you look at his book, Is This Anything?, it's got fucking line breaks in it. It is a collected poems. It's like his things are meticulously... So anyway, it's like it was an allegory for the same thing for poetry life. It's like, this is what I was doing. Laying about, walking around New York City, getting to know, and going to the clubs, reading my stuff. There's no... I think it's fun. Poets should start to think of themselves as, like, in show business and as performers and as entertainers and as comedians. It should be an equivalent. There should be poetry clubs, just like there are comedy clubs. And, like, Seinfeld feels like a New York school thing in the way that it's autobiographical. It's an autofiction, really. even though it's about Larry David, it's his life, uh, and it's realism. It's sort of like it's based on real things. He uses he uses his real name. Like, uh, it's not that different than like a fucking New York school. It's almost like it could be, and I'm sure they probably didn't know anything about that, but who knows? Maybe artistically those ideas were ricocheting around, and so that kind of conceptual thing, could have been in the air. Larry David, I think, has his mind to kind of hip things and beatnik. There are references to beatnik kind of culture in the Village and shit on Seinfeld. So anyway, I'm up on the stage at Red Room, and I literally, like I said, I was microdosing, but I had this kind of epiphanic moment where I'm like, I've become the kind of Seinfeld poet, and this feels exactly like the beginning of Seinfeld. You know how they do the bumpers where it's like he's up there and there's a curtain and there's all the little people at tables and shit. I'm like, that is what the Red Room, like that moment just kind of hit me. And then Jada says my time is up. And she's like, I know you got moves. I know you're going to get into your thing, but your time is up. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I just ended, even though my poem was almost over, I literally had like 3 lines left. I wasn't going to disobey the time limit, and I just kind of called it a day. But like, even in that one, I was beginning to soar. Who knows what was about to happen, because I had just taken the mic off the stand, and I was about to go into the Seinfeld moment. And I was about to become Seinfeld, and it sort of was nipped in the bud. But that was really the beginning of the Red Room thing, because that was the moment where it was like, I first saw that space, and, to be honest, when we were emailing about it later, I didn't put 2 and 2 together that quickly. I was still kind of dragging my feet about it, whether or not it was going to work or this or that. And I don't know. It's just weird. That one little moment where I kind of had this, like, I don't know, a flash of recognition, or not necessarily deja vu, but maybe precognition. It was kind of like a forecast or like a sign, maybe. That doesn't happen to me that often, I wouldn't say. That type of, like, I don't know. There was something different. Obviously when you're on stage or whatever, you're always having ideas, this or that. But that did feel like kind of a unique, that felt like the birth. The problem for me is I'm between all of these different things. I'm in a band. I do poetry, but like I'm frustrated because I'm also a performer and I want to entertain, and I don't really want to be a stand-up comedian, but like that's the space where those people kind of work. So I'm like trying to figure that out. Somebody was telling me at their college, their professor like makes them go out and do an open mic as like an assignment. It maybe not makes them, but like it's an assignment that they can do. Like go out, go to an open mic, write something, go to an open mic, or just watch or whatever. I think that's not a bad idea. As it is almost like a class presentation, or I think actors and sort of other types of performers need places where they can go. I don't get why actors don't go to open mics, because actors really have nowhere to perform other than in plays and shit. And that's a whole thing. It's like you need to go out and get in front of an audience and just like let it rip. And so for me, I'm like trying to figure out, it's like, well, what do I do? Do I do solo shows? And so this was kind of an interesting moment where it was like, I was going into a stand-up comedy kind of like physicality that feels like very natural to me. Like I want to do all that stuff with the microphone. I want to play with the cable and take it off the stand and play with the stand, and I love all that shit. I was raised on Comedy Central. I think I'm a stand-up comedian in a certain way. But anyway, that was a special open mic, and I felt good about it afterwards. I felt like, okay, I've walked away from this. I did a good job. And then 2 days later, I had a gig at, I don't know if I'm really going to get to go through this whole fucking year. I'm only in April. This is probably so boring for everybody. I had this gig at Castelli Cafe, which I do want to talk about Castelli Cafe for a sec. Because this is an example of trial and error. It wasn't something that just clicked in immediately. I originally pitched an open mic at Castelli Cafe, and the guy already had one on Sundays. He was offering me Monday, and I said no because I thought I might have to film that day. And Castelli Cafe was a really cool venue on 8th Avenue. It's gone. It closed in the summer, unfortunately. I guess that's spoiler alert, but it just had so much character. The bartender was cool, even though he was a little bit of a judgmental control freak. It was cheap. It was near my house. I could walk there, so that was a big part of it. But in a certain way, it was like trying to make something happen that wasn't really going to work. You know, my idea for it was like, we'll do Brooklyn culture in Manhattan. We'll bring System Lord, we'll bring performance art or poetry or whatever. We'll do like, you know, basically what I'm doing at the open mic now, except it's sort of near Madison Square Garden. It's a part of town that just like no young person would really go to. It's just a hassle. Getting there from Brooklyn is just not that easy. And so this gig, the 22nd, I booked this guy, Adam Lytle, who's super cool. He's from Cincinnati. We played on Valentine's Day together. Just coincidentally. We were both booked on Pete's that day. And so, like, he was one of the few musicians I fucking even knew at this point. But he's a great musician. He's got, like, a Leonard Cohen. And he's into poetry. His finger picking and shit is, like, really amazing. And, you know, it was a good show. We got paid $30 a piece. You know, I could walk there. It was really just like an idyllic. I wish I had more shows going on, but the gigs that I had were like really nice. I mean, I was still playing guitar and shit at this point. I didn't really I don't know. I kind of went ape shit. If you watch the videos, they're probably embarrassing. I've been screaming over bad cover songs and bad originals since I was a child. I've been screaming off key. I was just thinking the other day about how important Mitch Ryder in the Detroit Wheel is to like my whole everything. Because when I perform, particularly with System Lord, but also at the open mic sometimes, my voice goes into like this like kind of screamy, like it's like a teenage caterwaul. It's sort of like Peter Wolf from Jay Giles Band. Doing it. It's sort of like a white person doing Mick Jagger doing, you know, like Blues Guys or whatever. I don't know.